Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? Andy, good morning. Let's see if this goes this morning. Hey, I got a project I need to talk to you about, young man. Um, let's see how this works today. I've been battling Facebook for a half hour. Got a bug of some kind, so I hope everybody will be just a tad bit patient if I seem a little bit off. Bill, good morning. How are you doing today? Good morning, all the way from Kentucky. Jim, I am not an envious person, but in this case, I'll make an exception.
Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
I hope everything, like I say, this works out this morning. Been plagued with just an absolute herd of Facebook issues. So let's see how this turns out. I keep threatening to do something with Zoom. I haven't quite figured that out, but we may have to make some adjustments here in the future real fast. Hey, well, good morning, mi amigos. Once again, here in Kingman, Arizona, it has been a week of seasons. Let's see, last Monday or so, we had a little bit of rain, a little bit of sleet, and a dusting of snow on the mountains behind the house. And even though it was a bit cold, I sure appreciated the rain. I've mentioned this before, but it's been so dry, we're going to be hunting jerky instead of deer in this country. And this weekend, it is about 90 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. And on yesterday morning's walkabout, I came across a snake. So, how are things in your neighborhood? Well, this morning we are going to do something a little different. And got a little program. We're going to lean more towards history this morning. Bill, gosh darn it, you got Route 6 on Pennsylvania. It's a drive I have not made yet. This morning's program, we're going to do something a little bit different. We are going to we're going to do road trip inspiration, and I have an interesting chapter in the Route 66 story. But today the focus is on history. Let's see if I can make the subject a bit more interesting than an insurance seminar or high school history class. And I've received a bunch of inquiries about our weekly trivia contest and Coffee with Jim. Would you like to see that return, guys? Speaking of Coffee with Jim, I'm having my coffee in a roadkill mug from Seligman, Arizona this morning. As a teaser for this morning's program, this is a late 1950s picture postcard of the El Pueblo Motor Court in Flagstaff, Arizona. E.B. Goebel built this motel along Route 66 for Philip Johnson in 1936. Surprisingly, the motel has survived into the modern era. Its future is kind of a question mark. Last year, a new owner announced plans to renovate and upgrade the property, but guess what? COVID kind of sidetracked things a bit. A few years before that, there was an announcement that the motel There was plans to convert the facility into a museum dedicated to the Navajo Code Talkers. See, Philip Johnson is the fellow credited with kicking off the Navajo Code Talker program in World War II. And a few of the Code Talkers stayed at this motel before shipping out to basic training. In 1896, a missionary named William Johnson moved his family from Kansas to Arizona. Johnson and his wife raised 4 children among the Navajo. Young Philip learned to speak Navajo so well, the tribe came to rely on him as an interpreter. Well, William, Philip's father, worked tirelessly to help the Navajo. At the time, the lands they lived on were considered public domain. One of his projects was to secure the rights of the Navajo to the lands they had occupied. In 1901, William traveled to Washington, D.C., along with 2 Navajo men. And even though Philip was only 9 years old, he was brought along to serve as an interpreter. When the group arrived at the White House, President Roosevelt's secretary told them the president did not have time for them. William informed the secretary that they had traveled 2,000 miles from Arizona territory and that they did not have funds to stay in town. They were given an audience with President Roosevelt. In Roosevelt's office, William rolled out a map. The Navajo explained how generations of their families had lived on this land, how it's Navajo tradition for a mother to bury her child's umbilical cord in the ground, tying them to that land forever. Young Philip translated every word. And a few weeks after returning to Arizona, a telegram was sent from the Indian Rights Association saying that President Theodore Roosevelt had signed an executive order on November 14, 1901, setting aside lands for the Navajo Reservation. Before continuing this morning's Odyssey, I want to give a shout out to the one and only Cactus Inn Motel in McLean, Texas. At the end of the day, the Route 66 adventure doesn't have to end. This renovated gem that dates to the mid-1950s is a time capsule wrapped in modern amenities, and the superb Red River Steakhouse is within spitting distance. So you are always assured an excellent dinner. Aside from the contributions made during World War II, the Navajo Code Talkers are really an amazing chapter in American history. Some years ago, when working around Winslow, Arizona, I had an opportunity to get to know a fellow that had served as a code talker during the war. And I'll never forget a particular conversation we had over a few beers and dinner at the Falcon restaurant. He said that as a young boy on the reservation, he had been taught that white people were crazy. He had been forced to attend a school where he was taught proper farming methods, even though his people had been farming in the area for centuries. Use of his native language was forbidden. To do so would lead to harsh punishment. Confirmation that white people were crazy came when recruiters traveled to the reservation and were willing to pay young Navajo men to speak their native language. When compared to all other groups, Native Americans were the largest contributors per capita to the armed forces in World War II. Rather than wait for the draft, a full third of able-bodied men between 18 and 50 years of age volunteered. In some tribes, 70% of the men between 16 and 50 volunteered or tried to serve in some capacity. It's a pretty amazing display of patriotism, especially in consideration of the prejudicial views of the time. Native Americans were not deemed citizens until June 2nd, 1924, when Congress enacted the Indian Citizenship Act. The right to vote, however, was governed by state law. As a result, until 1957, some states barred Native Americans from voting. The Navajo Code Talkers Museum in Tuba City, Arizona. This is one of those places that should be added to the bucket list of every road trip adventure. As a bonus, every road into Tuba City is designated a scenic highway. But my favorite drives are on US 160 and US 89 from Flagstaff or Monument Valley. Absolutely spectacular. Enhancing the adventure is as easy as grabbing a bite to eat at a local cafe and just simply listen to the folk talk. Be sure to check the menu for regional specialties such as atole, a delicious blue cornmeal mush. That's also on the breakfast menu at the El Rancho in Gallup, New Mexico. Thought I'd throw that out. And I also highly recommend a visit to a real trading post. Not one of the tourist traps, such as you can find these like the Gap has a really great trading post. The Navajo are the most famous of the code talkers, and for an association with special units that had a Native American component. However, in World War I and World War II, members of numerous tribes were involved with similar programs. Here's a bit of a surprise for you. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, 13 Comanche code talkers hit Utah Beach with Allied troops. A group of 27 Muskogee enlisted in the U.S. Army together in January 1941. They were 16% of Iowa's tribal population. During battles in North Africa, these men were employed in the Signal Corps to use their native Fox language. Mohawk language code talkers were pressed into service by the United States Army in the Pacific Theater. And in World War I, Cherokee soldiers of the U.S. 30th Infantry Division were assigned to transmit messages in Cherokee while under fire during the Second Battle of the Somme. This took place in September 1918 when their unit was under British command. Like I say, pardon me, folks, I got a bit of a bug this morning. During World War I, as the Germans had tapped and broken all American codes, a desperate Colonel Bloor of the Signal Corps pressed some Choctaw men into service in October of 1918. A captured German officer confirmed they were completely by placing Choctaw in each company of the 2nd Battalion, messages could be transmitted regardless, even if the telephone lines were tapped. This was the Special Choctaw Telephone Squad. Native Americans speaking their language were also used as messengers and runners between units. In 1989, the French government bestowed the Knight of the Order of National Merit to the Cherokee code talkers of World War I and World War II, and the Comanche code talkers of World War II. The Alamo Scouts. This is another unique chapter in Native American military history. This elite unit was a precursor to the Navy SEALs. Their exploits are nothing short of extraordinary. The first Alamo Scout mission was conducted on the 27th and 28th of February, 1944 in New Guinea. The men conducted a pre-invasion reconnaissance of Los Negros Island, a Japanese outpost in the Admiralty Island chain. In the 12 hours between coming ashore and pickup off the coast, the scouts infiltrated encampments, evaluated ammunition dumps and artillery, identified Japanese positions, and pinpointed key points of concentration. The information proved invaluable for selecting the bombing targets for the invasion. If you want to know more about the Alamo Scouts, I highly recommend reading Ghost Soldiers, the epic account of World War II's greatest rescue mission by a fellow named Hampton Sides. I read this book last year, and it was just almost hard to believe. The story chronicles an amazing mission launched in January 1945. The Alamo Scouts marched 30 rugged miles behind enemy lines in the Philippine jungles to rescue 513 POWs, including the last survivors of the infamous Bataan Death March. Native Americans made an array of contributions in World War II. Did you know that in the famous photo of a flag raising on Iwo Jima, there's a fella named Ira Hayes? He was a member of the Pima tribe. Julia Reeves, a first lieutenant, U.S. Army, was a member of the Potawatomi tribe in Crandon, Wisconsin. She volunteered in 1942 and served in the Army Nurse Corps. She was assigned to the 1st Medical Unit shipped to the Pacific. She was later assigned to the 231st Station Hospital in Norwich, England. Then she volunteered to go ashore and set up aid stations on June 7th, the day after the initial invasion of Normandy. She later served in a medical MASH unit during the Korean War. In the 45th Infantry Division, that saw 511 days of combat, 3 of the division's 8 Medal of Honor recipients were Native Americans. Ernest Childers of C Company, 180th Regiment, was honored for his exceptional bravery on Sicily in September 1943. Jack Montgomery, 1st Company, 180th Regiment, was recognized for his efforts at Anzio in February 1944. And Van Barefoot, Mississippi Choctaw, I Company, 157th Regiment, received his Medal of Honor for actions near Carano, Italy in May of 1944. Joe Medicine Crow, that died in 2016. This is another amazing story. He was born October 27, 1913, on the Crow Indian Reservation near Lodge Grass, Montana. One of his grandfathers, White Man Runs Him, was a scout for George Armstrong Custer before the Battle of the Little Bighorn. He was the first member of his tribe to go to college and was in graduate school in California when America entered the war. He joined the Army, became a scout in the 103rd Infantry Division, and fought in Europe. Whenever he went into battle, he would paint red stripes on his arms beneath his uniform, and he carried in his helmet a sacred yellow-painted eagle feather provided by Sundance medicine men to shield him from harm. Now, to become a Crow war chief, a warrior had to touch a living enemy, take an enemy's weapon, steal an enemy horse, and lead a victorious war party. He did it all. First, he led a 7-man squad carrying explosives through a wall of artillery fire to blast German positions along the Siegfried Line. Then, while helping to take over a German-held village, he literally ran into a German soldier, knocked him down, he disarmed the soldier, taking away his rifle. And then, towards the end of the war, he stole dozens of prized horses from an elite group of SS officers. And he was the last Crow Indian to become a war chief. All of this fascinating history is presented in interesting exhibits and displays at the National Museum of the American Indian on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. The museum is really fascinating, eye-opening, and informative. It also houses the world's most expansive collections of First Peoples objects, photographs, and media, covering the entire Western Hemisphere from the Arctic Circle to Tierra del Fuego. It's also home to the National Native American Veterans Memorial. It has expansive displays that chronicle Native American military history. It's part of the Smithsonian Institution. I got a couple more stories I want to share with you. One is about an interesting Native American fellow that was front and center during several key moments in the American Civil War. And then when I wrap this up, I want to share with you an often overlooked role that Native Americans played in the founding of the nation. Eli Samuel Parker was commissioned a lieutenant colonel during the American Civil War. He rose to the rank of brigadier general. He was one of only 2 Native Americans to earn a general's rank during the war. The second was Confederate General Stand Waite. Parker was a Seneca chief, a legal scholar, and engineer, a Civil War hero, and a cabinet-level commissioner, all by the age of 45. He had hoped to become an attorney, but when he applied for entrance to Harvard, he was declined because only citizens of the United States were allowed to attend. When the Civil War began, Parker offered to raise a volunteer Iroquois regiment to fight for the Union. And he also proposed using Iroquois-speaking volunteers to create communication codes. The governor of New York refused his offer at first, but in 1863, Parker became captain of an Iroquois regiment. And he also served as a division engineer before he joined General Grant's personal military staff. And after the war, President Grant appointed him Commissioner of Indian Affairs. In this position, he went west to negotiate settlement between the government and Native American tribes. Much of Parker's story is preserved at the Galena and U.S. Grant Museum in Galena, Illinois. This is another museum that I strongly suggest you add to your road trip bucket list. And it's a bit off this morning's topic, but I should note that Galena itself really should be added to your bucket list. This is an amazingly well-preserved 19th century town. Most of the entire business district was built before 1900. Just an example of the little gems, the architectural treasures you'll find here. The uniquely styled Dowling House was built in 1826. The wonderful and beautiful home of President Ulysses S. Grant was a gift from local citizens. And just outside of town, Horseshoe Mound is an ancient ceremonial site on the outskirts of Galena. If you climb to the top, you've got views of 3 states. Needless to say, there are some great little restaurants in century-old cafes and some really interesting Airbnb and bed and breakfast, neat lodging options. And one more. I want to share with you the Iroquois Confederacy. This was established by a Huron known to legend as the Peacemaker. At the time, back around 1400, the nations of the Iroquois had been enmeshed in continuous intertribal conflicts. The cost of war was high and had weakened their societies. The great Peacemaker and Hiawatha, chief of the Onondaga tribe, met to discuss how best to bring peace between the nations. They then traveled to each of the 5 nations to share their ideas on a peace treaty. In the arrangement, each nation maintained its own leadership, but they all agreed that common causes would be decided in the Grand Council of Chiefs. Each tribe had 1 vote, and unanimity was required for decisions. The Confederacy was cemented mainly by their desire to stand together against invasion. The Iroquois Confederacy differed from other American Indian confederacies in that it was better organized, more defined, and more effective. They even persuaded colonial governments to use similar structure in their joint negotiations. The fall of the Iroquois Confederacy followed the century after the American Revolution. The defeat of the British and their Indian allies brought ruin and an end to Iroquois independence. The Iroquois were forced from their homelands and settled on reservations in western New York and Canada, but it remained in use until 1867. Guys, I say this often, but it never ceases to amaze me. Time just flies when we get together on Sunday morning. And I know this morning's program was a bit different, but I still hope you found it interesting. And one more note, and then I'll move on. Most tribes maintain a heritage center or memorial to their military veterans. You can really enhance a road trip by including 1 or 2. And I should note that there's a monument to the Code Talkers in front of the depot in Old Harvey House in Gallup, New Mexico. This building also houses the Gallup Cultural Center that preserves the history of several area tribes. And as a bonus, Angela's Cafe is located there as well. It is one of our favorite lunch stops during a Route 66 adventure. There's also a great photo op of the Code Talker sculpture and monument framed by Window Rock in Window Rock, Arizona. One thing I want to point out, and one reason I did this program today, I get a lot of inquiries on Native Americans. A lot of the tribes do not allow photography on the reservations without a permit. If you visit the reservations, this may sound, I don't mean to sound prejudicial, condescending, any of this, but a lot of people over the years, the last 100 years of Southwest tourism, the Indians have often been treated as curiosity, circus sideshows, if you will, and treat, just like with anybody, treat the folks you meet with respect. And I can't say this enough, but when I was a kid traveling Route 66, my dad had a photo of a trading post over somewhere around the New Mexico-Arizona line. I was pretty young. But it had all these billboards along Route 66 that said, "Stop, see live rattlesnake, see live jackrabbit." And the last one said, 100 yards, turn here, see live Indian. Kind of sad. Next week, I'm going to get to a more road trip centered discussion. I will be talking about Route 66 in the Los Angeles metro area. Now, many Route 66 enthusiasts bypass this section for good reason, such as traffic or safety concerns in some areas. On my next episode of Coffee with Jim, I'm going to provide a bit of assurance and encouragement for exploration in the big city and share a few of my favorite places. Now, keep in mind, I'm seldom comfortable in any place with more than 3 stoplights. So if I can negotiate this metropolis, and if I can enjoy the adventure, so can you. And I do hope that you can join us. Invite your friends. Let's make it a coffee party. And that takes me to a plug for a few sponsors. Route 66 navigation is more than a mere travel app. It is your passport to worry-free Route 66 adventures, even in Los Angeles. You have updated maps, hundreds and hundreds of points of interest with maps, contact information, website links, and more. There is no getting lost on Route 66 with the Route 66 navigation app. Next up, the one and only Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri. The infectious essence of a Route 66 Odyssey is preserved here, the oldest continuously operated motel on Route 66. As a bonus, it is comfortable and quiet. This makes it the perfect place to end a day of Route 66 exploration. And if you're a fan of road trips, I highly recommend Route Trip USA. Memory-making road trip adventures are their specialty. And as a bonus, you can enhance a Route 66 adventure booked with Route Trip USA by arranging to include a tour of Kingman, Arizona, led by yours truly. This past week, I mentioned a milestone. 6,500 followers on the Jim Hinckley's America Facebook page. Well, imagine my surprise this morning when I found that we were sitting at just under 6,550 followers. And before I forget, in answer to inquiries about signed copies of my books, Murder in Mayhem on the Main Street of America, Tales from Bloody 66, and 100 Things to Do on Route 66 Before You Die. Well, autographed copies are available on our website at jimhinckleysamerica.com. Well, we're about here wrapping this up, but let's get to your questions and see if I have the answers. And if I don't, I'll sure try to find them. Good morning, Mr. Andy. Bill, Jim's kind of made me a little bit envious. He's getting out on the road there, and then, oh, excellent, excellent. Yeah, Andy, I'll talk to you about that. Maybe you can send me your phone number on Messenger, and I'll give you a call, because we've got a project coming up. Route 6, it really intrigues me, and I'm going to have to get out there on that road end to end sometime. Mr. Keith and Miss Shan, how are you? Jill, good morning. Michelle, God bless. Good morning, all the way from California. We have Connie with us. She is doing marvelous and wonderful things with her team and Tucumcari. And when she's not doing that, she's building a team in Tucumcari. Good stuff happening there. Jill, yeah, Galena, Kansas is a boy. That's a neat place. I don't have enough words for Galena, and it's overlooked a lot. It's kind of off the beaten path a little bit. Ian, my pleasure. Glad you found it interesting. Miss Maggie, all the way from Michigan, and Nolan, how are you doing today? Well, I hope that you enjoyed our time together as much as I did. Any other questions I can answer for you? Like I say, next week we're going to do a program about Los Angeles. We'll probably start with San Bernardino and run all the way out to Manny Mendelssohn's last stop on the pier, the Bob Waldmeyer Memorial out there at the very end of Santa Monica Pier. Got some great places to share with you, some real road trip inspiration. I think you're going to enjoy it quite a lot. Andy Sampson, he mentioned program coming up. I've been alluding to this, but the short version, long story, I'm working with Kingman Main Street to develop a self-guided walking tour here in the historic business district of Kingman. And should be kind of an interesting project. And there's another component to this too. It's going to be quite a project. Folks, I really look forward to our visits. I'm really behind on launching some of the projects that we've been talking about, but I do hope to get those going here before summer. And if that's it, I want to thank you again. It's always such a pleasure. And next week, invite your friends. And like I said, I know LA can be intimidating, but like I say, I have trouble. I start to get as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs in any place that has more than 3 stoplights. But I do enjoy my Route 66 adventures in the Los Angeles area. Yeah, Nolan, it's not comfortable. But we've got to address history as it was, because only then can we see how far we've progressed and how far we have to go. And that's why I get so upset that history isn't taught as something that's alive. And I also get upset with people who want to obsess over the past, the injustices, but not offer solutions. And likewise, I get upset with people who want to whitewash history. It does no one a service when we do that. But it was, I came in a lot of that stuff, but I can still remember. I don't know where the trading post was at, but my dad talked about it for years. There was a billboard there near the Arizona line. Stop, see, live Indian. Guys, thank you again. And, we'll see you next Sunday morning at 7 o'clock. Vaya con Dios, mi amigos. Adios.